Hey guys, this is Zlewikk, a guy with few hundred, I think at this point we've got 800 hours of experience in EU5 on various patches, and today I'll be walking you through my personal guide on how to handle your population. In a nutshell, if you're not an experienced player, you don't have to care about it. You see in my 1600s game as Poland, AI, for example, is handling really well, like having a huge amount of the population. And if you go even farther into the game, you'll see that it does a not bad job handling that. And if you use automations or not look much at it, it's not like you're gonna completely lose the game. But there are many ways to leverage the population mechanics for your own advantage to give an edge over the AIs, to give an edge over the players in the multiplayer, and simply achieve your goals. First of all, population will be important for multiple things in your locations. If you want to turn a rural location into a town, you need at least 5,000 people on that specific location. You see, town gives you plenty of bonuses, but most importantly, access to the urban buildings, which long-term increase your production so much, which in the end converts into the trade and taxes income. It also gives you access to more control and also buildings that increase your control even further. Then at 30,000 of population, you will be able to create a city, and city gives you so many more bonuses. It's pretty much a town on steroids. And so in long term, if you have urban locations, you want every single urban location to be a city. And especially to achieve this 30,000 threshold outside of India and China, you will have to often play around to achieve that. Sometimes locations will just increase by themselves, but you often need and want to get specific locations to become a city, and for that 30,000 population will be very important. Then of course the population will be employed in specific buildings. So even if we talk about a rural location, you will still need labelers to work in your buildings, you will need labelers to work in your RGOs, and you need peasants work in specific rural buildings. So for any type of the location, you will need the population in order to employ them in your buildings, so you can take advantage of the constructions you have in that province and make money in the end, or make manpower or any other resources that will be very important for your other goals. With Christmas coming, I'm sure you're looking for some games as gifts for your friends, family. If you're doing so, make sure to check endebo.com, which is sponsor of this video, where you can buy not only games but also gift cards and e-gift cards for any platform that you're looking for, PlayStation, Xbox. You will find great offers with great discounts here, and by clicking the link in the video description, you're gonna also support the channel. You'll see that when you hover over here, each location will be having its capacity. That capacity will be impacted by location rank, where you see city gives you 100,000, while town only gives you 20,000. Vegetation will be also very important, where you see farmlands gives you 100,000. Some others, like for example woods, gives you only 50,000, forest only gives you 25,000, etc, etc. Climate will be impacting that positively or negatively, river being over there. So in general, the geography will be a big base of the modifiers for your population capacity, but then in long term, a very hidden modifier called development will be also in the end important to increase that capacity. Development, you see, impacts a lot of stuff in your location. What's important, what impacts, the base capacity is vegetation, usually, and some, other modifiers. Then you have the percentage modifiers that increase that base. So when we talk about rural locations, the capacity is usually much lower than towns and cities, because they don't have that 20,000 and 100,000 base modifiers to the location. Finally, how the calculation for your monthly population growth for a location is made is just like this. It's actually really straightforward. It's the amount of the pops that you're having, x your population growth, divided by 12, because the population growth is yearly. So for example, if a location has 10,000 population and you have 1% of population growth, every month you receive 9 new people. Now when you're an unexperienced player that you shouldn't care about, min-maxing the population, there will be a few modifiers that you always will want to avoid to not affect your population growth. You see, when I hover again on this, each of the locations will be having population growth. That will be usually mostly the positive modifiers, but I want to first warn you about a few negative modifiers that will be impacting this negatively. Over here we see an expensive food. So there's not much food storage and you don't produce much food in the specific market. Then you can get up to minus 0.1% of population growth, which is not much, so you also shouldn't care about this. But there will be 3 modifiers that will be killing your population growth. First of them will be war exhaustion, where you get 0.03 decreased population growth on every single location for every point of war exhaustion. So you have 5 war exhaustion, this will be minus 0.15 of population growth in your country. So sometimes it might be not so worth to go too much into the war to get hurt on your population growth. Then once your location is occupied and looted, you see you also receive another 0.50% of the population growth, which is a much bigger modifier than the ones that we've talked about. Another thing that will be impacting your growth negatively is devastation in the province, where depending on the devastation from 0 to 100, you can get up to minus 0.5 of negative population growth. Do avoid that, and in case you do take over from AI's locations with devastation, make sure to use your cabinet member to simply recovery effort, which you see is 5% recovery of devastation per month. This is literally a quick way to get rid of that devastation ASAP. Otherwise, the devastation will be dropping very slowly. So these are the modifiers that you have to avoid going into, so definitely avoid devastation, avoid war exhaustion, avoid getting looted, but of course this might be a matter of the war that you're ongoing, so having forts might help you prevent that from happening, especially on the borders. And I think I didn't mention that last modifier, avoid getting your locations starved. So pay for the food, make sure there is food in the market for the locations to buy, because starving location is gonna get up to 2.5 negative population growth, which is, and one thing when I'm looking at the bonus is the biggest malus and the biggest on any side modifier that you can get to the population growth. But it's really hard from my experience to get to location starving. So again, it's not like you should really worry about it. Alright, how about increasing the amount of the population for the population growth in the location? Well, first of all, rural settlements by default you'll be getting 0.10% of growth. So if you have locations that don't have much population, don't rush creating towns over there, because this is gonna actually slow down the growth of the population. But on the other hand, you might not want to have too big rural locations, and sometimes it might be more worth to turn these rural locations that have too much of population into towns and cities, because you see there's another modifier here called available free land, which will be a scaling modifier from 0 to 0.23%, depending how much of percentage of the population capacity you currently have in the location, where 0.23 is the maximum modifier, of course 0 is the lowest modifier. So now when you see a population capacity in rural location hitting absolute maximum, you can actually increase the population growth by creating a town or city over there, because that will increase the population capacity and you're gonna receive a bigger modifier from available free land than you're receiving from having a rural location. And since we talk about available free land, that modifier might actually be even stronger when we talk about population that is below 10,000 of population and has less than 10% of population capacity used. because then you will be receiving abundant free land instead. That is a scaling modifier, I think up to 1.5%. I'm still not 100% sure about some of these percentages because they rework that on the current patch. But in any way, you see this is a much higher modifier, so on a very low population locations, you will be saving a higher increase up to 10,000 of pops over there, or of course hitting 10% population capacity. Important note, neither that or that previous freeland modifier do not apply on Arctic provinces.
No! God, please, no! No!
Then you'll see there will be two modifiers that will be impacting that based on the food that you are having first of all in the market. So that's the cheap food modifier, which was reworked to be up to 0.07%. So you see when we go to the market and we hover on that market, you'll see when we hover on the food stockpile, there will be what's called food price. So now, depending on the amount of the food that you're producing, demand and supply, you might get to the minimum level of 0.01, and ideally you want that to be in every single of your markets. So this way you got that 0.07 modifier. You know, ideally when you're playing, you should be focusing on having locations that will be your base of food for the market. Like for example, you see over here, I have Pontedera that is producing wheat, that is having a high food output, is having a high RGO, and on top of that I also started stacking the food productivity modifiers, like for example irrigation that is built over there, and then of course there'll be some other modifiers that will be impacting this. This is very early into the game, so over time you can even get 500 or even more food in just one location to feed entire areas of towns and cities. Second modifier that we'll be seeing here that is related to the food is what's called large food storage in the province. I'm reading on Wiki that the food storage is a scaling modifier that should be giving you 0.03% population growth per 12 months of food stored in the province, up to 0.3%, but personally the highest I've seen when I was checking AIs in my own gameplay was 0.1%. So let me know guys if you've seen more than that, you've seen actually 0.3. But you see what it's saying that's important, it's saying in province, so that's not a market modifier like for the cheap food here, it's a province modifier. There'll be multiple buildings impacting that food storage. You can simply go to your buildings and search for what's called local food capacity modifier. And there'll be multiple buildings that will be impacting that. Obviously there will be granary that will be giving you a flat modifier of 200 per level. We'll be having the fishing villages, and that will be giving you 50 of flat modifier among many others. And this is a pretty strong building for your rural locations, because you see it also gives you maritime presence, sailors, trade capacity, harbor capacity, which are important to spread your proximity, and also possible laborers and soldiers. And obviously fishing village is for locations with the sea access. You'll be having farming villages for more inland locations that give you even more food capacity, but also production percentage, so that will be good for this locations like producing wheat or livestock or rice or some other great sources of your food. And finally there'll be also a market village that will be giving you another 50 of food capacity, and you see that can be built in rural settlements. You anyway in your game will want to have food storage just in case there especially little ice age comes, or some other modifiers that will be requiring you to feed a lot of food into your locations. So having that big storage is something that you should think about playing, even if you're not too much experience. And in the end, if you just produce a lot of food and make sure that you have food storage, you will always end up with having these two modifiers for your population growth. I was mentioning devastation. On the other hand, prosperity will be giving you a positive modifier to your population growth. Apparently on that patch they made it a bit harder to maintain high prosperity, but at the maximum you see it's gonna give you 0.20% of population growth, which is relatively high compared to some of other modifiers that you are seeing here, but still not as impactful as 0.5% that we've been having from the devastation. What else can impact your population growth? In the parliament you often see what's called a conducted census, which is a flat 0.50% population growth modifier to all of your locations. So see for example here in the Poland land, instead of 8.4 thousand of monthly growth, And this will increase over a month tick to 21,000 population growth. What makes it strong, it impacts all of the locations. But obviously that modifier will be only for the duration of the parliament, so you see it's about, I think, 180 days. So it's not so long, just a few months of getting this maintained. So sometimes there will be simply stronger debates in the parliament to take them to conduct a census. What else impacts the population growth? Well, AI difficulty on very hard AIs are gonna receive 0.1% of the population growth, so it's not huge. The new colonial nation will also be receiving 1% population growth just to allow you to grow the population the new world faster. I was taking, for example, a look at this safe, and you see that AIs are still struggling. There's not that much of population in the new world, still being increased and populated. But when you open a late game, let's say 5 from the AIs, you see that the locations will be full of people. And that's, you know, to my previous point, that the population will grow by itself over time. And also that modifier that I was mentioning to you about locations with below 10,000 of population. Okay, I was talking about a lot of stuff that you don't have, you know, instant impact on. It's more like working long term with them, having them in mind, what to avoid. But how can more directly impact your population? Well, I will start with a building. If you, that's my recommendation. Search for modifiers when you look at the buildings. You see that when you look at population growth buildings, there'll be a building called settlement. This is a building that is available only on the rural locations, and you see it's not only giving you 1% population growth, which is insane. It's more than all of the modifiers I was mentioning earlier combined together usually, and also it gives migration attraction, which will drive more and more people towards that location. So if you know, okay, that rural location, I don't need that RGO long term, I can pay decreased RGO level to get it into a town and then into a city. How about we build a settlement then already to make sure that this population reaches 30,000 of people as fast as possible, so can make it a city. This is a much faster impact that you might have. Then there will be also 2 cabinet actions that you can be doing to impact this, and one of them will be being encourage migration. See, this works for specific locations. So for example, in my Poland run, when you look at the location ranks, I've been using that to get most of these locations from towns to cities, because by default they're not growing as fast as I wanted, and I had to manually migrate people there for it to reach 30,000 people, and to me to upgrade them from towns to cities. Then on the other side of the spectrum, we also have what's called expelled people, which, as you see, is giving -2 migration attraction, and also allows the peasants and laborers to migrate. And via this, you can get rid of people, but here it is not on location level, but more on a province level. So you can leverage that modifier to get rid of people from location where you don't need them. Maybe you have an overpopulated area that you want to spread across more locations. I was mentioning migration attraction, so you know, besides the settlements and the cabinet actions, each of the locations will also be having multiple modifiers impacting the migration attraction, like the development being over there, your prosperity or devastation, the price of the raw goods, amount of the free lands, or some other modifiers. So for example, see in my campaign over here, Płock got so many of people by default, because it has all of these modifiers. But more like importantly, there are also to see buildings that impact this. So besides the settlement, the migration attraction will be also impacted by cathedrals, which is often built by your clergy, as well as universities, which you usually do a lot in order to increase your cultural influence, as well as literacy. So now, for anyone lazy, this is gonna be a minute summary. First of all, avoid having war exhaustion, devastation, and looted locations and starving locations to not decrease your population. Second of all, you can impact the population of the locations by doing cabinet actions. One for the migration attraction, another one to depopulate. Then there'll be a lot of modifiers you can stack long term to increase the population in locations, which will be mainly stacking amount of the food that you're producing, as well as your food storage in that location. When a location has less than 10,000 population, it will increase very fast by itself. You don't have to care about it that much. And finally, you'll be buildings that will help you out with population growth, like settlements, as well as migration attraction, like besides settlement, also cathedrals and universities. Last mentioned, there will be also some outside modifiers for the population growth, like for example, Dharmic religions have 0.03% from Holy. I'm pretty sure also some of the religious figures that Hindu are having, they also impacting the population growth, and some of the nations will be having their specific advances impacting that. And of course, final goal of having these locations is to hit 30,000 to create a city and to have actual hands to work in your RGOs and buildings. This is it. I hope that you did like that content, that you did like my tips on how to handle your population in a nation, what impacts your population growth, and why you want to change population specific locations. If there's anything that I've missed, and I'm sure I did miss something, let me know in comments, because I'm also still learning that game. And subscribe to the channel to get notified about more guides in the future.